What is up, family? It's your boy, Funkmaster Bex. Couple things. First thing, chances are you haven't seen Daicon 3 or 4. It's easily solved by just looking it up on YouTube. I would maybe link it in the thread or the post, but like, it's not a legal stream, so like, right? But yeah, you can look it up on YouTube. Just look up Daicon 3 and 4. Opening animations. Should be like the first result, right? It's like 7 minutes in total. It's really not that. It's not that long. Not that much of a time commitment. So yeah. Second thing, our guest Spira had technical difficulties recording, so I had to use the Hangouts audio. So if it sounds weird, that's why. As always, coarse language spoilers.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the R Anime Podcast, and today we are kicking off a very special, very fun mini-series where we're gonna tackle everything that a certain studio has to offer. Mainly, the one, the only, Gainax. And it's gonna be pretty easy because I feel like they haven't done anything in a while, so we can just get through the backlog of everything that they've done since the very beginning. And today with me, we have one, the only, basedbecker. How you doing, fam?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Fate?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. I really appreciate that. And to keep up with the wholesomeness, we have none other than Gainaix on the pod as the internet's Gainax expert. How you doing, Spira?
How's it going?
How's the Taco Bell taste?
Oh my god. It tastes like Taco Bell, but it also tastes cheap, and cheap is good for my wallet.
That's good. Cheap is good for the heart, too.
I don't know if this is going to be good for my heart, but sure, let's say so.
Your metaphorical heart, not your physical heart.
I think that's a lost cause.
You know what isn't a lost cause, though? The efforts that 3 individuals put forth in 1981 to create possibly the first example of an original video animation, an OVA, and none other than Daicon III.
Ah, Daicon!
I mean, honestly, if any listeners haven't listened to it, first of all, like, you can't spoil it, so like you can listen to this podcast first. But also, like, Daicon 3 and Daicon 4 respectively are like 5 and 7 minutes long. And you guys should watch it, because it's pretty crazy. I mean, the soundtrack for Daicon 3 and Daicon 4, the background songs are really good, so...
Yeah, honestly, really good.
Just mute us and listen to them.
You know, I mean, this is going to come up later, but I just find it really funny since we're talking about the music. You know, the music and the Playboy bunny suit are the only copyright strikes that are on Daicon 4, not like the 1 million other things.
Wait, seriously?
Yep, those are the only 2 things that make Daicon impossible to export outside of Japan.
Interesting. I'm not completely surprised about that because the other references can be labeled under parody.
Yeah, true. So like more like, yeah, I mean, because there's like more transformation to like Ultraman characters or the Yamato and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, you know what? Let's just dive into Daicon 3 then. And let's talk about this OVA that, you know, anyone can watch on YouTube. It might be impossible to export, but sure lives on the internet. So when did you guys first come across Daicon 3 and why?
I actually watched it about a week ago because I learned that we were doing
week
this.
Week ago.
I was like, oh shit, I should watch this. Because I've heard about it for a long time. I've known that it's a thing for a while, but I just never actually watched it. So I found it on YouTube, and I was like, oh, this is pretty alright. I like I feel like this would look really great, like remastered, probably. Because it's only I want to say it's a VHS rip, I think. Because it's that old.
Yeah, the best quality version of Daicon that exists is from like a laser disc that came out along with like an art book.
Oh.
And that's the one that we have online. The should be Laserdisc version.
Oh. Laserdisc. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
That makes me feel like either really old or really young, because like I know what a Laserdisc is, but like I'm only 23. So
What the fuck, Bex? You're such a baby.
What?
Yeah, come on.
Come on, Bex. Little baby Bex.
Actually, I just turned 23 like a week ago, so.
Week ago. Did you watch Daicon 3 on your birthday?
No,
as
I
you
watched
turned 23?
I think either before my birthday or after.
So, I don't know about you, but I think you were 22.
Probably, yeah.
That's good.
Good.
Wow, so this has a lot of like special value to you.
It's a really important anime in Bex's life.
I mean, it's a really important anime in anime's life.
Oh, this is true. Well, Spirit, how did you come across it?
So I was looking up for daikon recipes because like, a daikon is like a really nutritious like Asian root vegetable. It's a radish, right? I don't know if you guys know what a radish is.
It's Goku's brother in Dragon Ball Z, right?
Yes, exactly. So it's like, imagine Raditz, but he's like shaped like a dick. He's white and he comes out of the ground.
So Bex.
Wait,
Yes!
what?
Exactly.
I was on board with all of this until you compared it to me. Holy shit.
I mean, she just listed 3 traits, and white looks like a dick, grows from the ground, and I mean, all 3 apply to you.
I mean, come on.
Damn the sleigh.
I mean, that's the subtitle to your autobiography.
Wait,
white,
what?
shaped like a dick, and growing from the ground.
Maybe related to Goku.
Probably, yeah.
So you were looking up Raditz recipes?
No, actually, that was a lie, just to set up this joke. I actually don't know when I got exposed to Daicon, because I mean, it's like I've had this like lifelong engagement with Gainax's work. I think the youngest was like, I was like 4 or 5 when I watched Ava.
Wait, Ava was around in the 30s?
I mean,
during the Great Depression?
yeah, I mean, it was our only source of stuff. Like, you know that one picture of like that Great Depression time traveler from like the like Charlie Chaplin film?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
a lady
yeah,
with like a cell phone. Yeah, she just brought Ava to the past, and that's where I saw it.
I'm glad.
But yeah, no, I mean, I've had like a lifelong interaction with Gainax and Gainax's work. So it could be as early as like 5 years ago or like 20, and I just don't remember, right?
Yeah, it's... Gainax is something, especially as people get more exposed to anime, like, it's one of those things you cannot watch anime without intersecting in some way with the influence of Gainax or Gainax-related things. And for me... yeah, one of the reasons why I watched Daicon 3, I think I saw Daicon 3 like 3 years ago or so. I think you actually brought it up, Spiro. Yeah. What? You bringing up like Gainax stuff? No way. I know. I was watching it, I just remember just being so floored by it, and then like reading that only 3 people worked on it. And like honestly, like I can't get 3 people to do a group project that's like for extra credit. Like
we can't even get 3 people to do a fucking podcast.
I know.
It's just me, you, and half of Becker.
The other half is still growing from the ground.
God damn it.
Base Daicon. But yeah, it's crazy, and also like it's one of those things that one could only be made at that time period in the 80s when nobody knew what the fuck anime really was going to be. Because you had Gundam and you had Nausicaa, which is how Ano got his start.
Well, Nausicaa actually came after both of
No, Nausicaa came after Daicon 3. Because I thought there was a Nausicaa reference in Daicon 3.
Yeah, no, it actually came out after Daicon IV too. Because
the anime or the manga?
Well, I think those came out concurrently. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. I haven't like looked too much into the Nausicaa manga, but definitely before the anime. For sure.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess now we can go more into like the production.
Yeah, of course.
Daicon. So, what is Daicon? Daicon was this there's this convention that's still going on now, called the Nihon SF Taikai, which is basically Japan's science fiction or like, SF
Mm-hmm.
convention, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's been going on since like the early 70s. And it's like a celebration of Japanese sci-fi media, like going from novels to short stories to film, but also like more inclusive of international stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of started in the 70s because like the 70s was when we had a major international sci-fi boom, right?
Right. Star
This was
Wars, Star
after,
Trek.
yes, exactly. Star Wars, Star Trek. This is right after Dune. This was right after 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right.
Andrei Tarkovsky was directing Solaris. So, like, the space race, we just came off of that. So
Right.
people had their sights on the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up going on was that they made this convention for sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why this is called Daicon III is because there were two branches of the SF Taikai. There was one set in Tokyo, which is known as, I think it's Tokon. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just Tokon.
Uh-huh.
And, pun there, it's a convention in Tokyo. It was the 70s. Give them some slack. But yeah, so there was the Tokyo Convention that went on for a really long time, and that's actually where the first of these opening animations happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was Taikon 6, I think,
Uh-huh.
had an animation by Ishiguro, the director of like Legend of the Galactic Heroes and Macross.
Right.
Yeah, he directed this like short film that I'm pretty sure is lost. But
Oh,
that was the
dang.
first of these opening animations, and I think that was for Taikon 6. What Daikon is that's the Osaka branch
Oh.
of
Uh-huh.
this thing.
Uh-huh.
Which is why, even though this convention has been going on for a really long time, why this was the third Daikon. The Daikon's name is just a pun, right?
Right.
It's like
Daicon and
a,
Daicon.
yeah, it's a
Daicon and
daikon
Daicon.
as in the radish,
Uh-huh.
but when you split the words dai and con, you get
Great con.
big
Yeah.
convention,
Mm-hmm.
right? So basically, there was like a board of convention staff that actually had, who was it? Yasuhiro Takeda was on the
Mm-hmm.
board. He becomes really important in the history of Gainax later. But he was on the board for Daicon III. And he basically says, hey guys, we should come up with an animation. And they're like, well, how should we do this? And they're like, well, we have like 3 buddies that know how to draw. And Okada, who's now known as like the Oda King, right?
Uh-huh.
We're going to get way more into him in later episodes. The Oda King was like, well, my parents are paying for an apartment because I just got like expelled last year, but I haven't told them. So we can just make this in my apartment. Takeda can give us the money and the cells. And then we can have our buddies Hideaki Anno, Hiroyuki Yamaga, and Takami Akai draw this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the whole drawing or like the production part happened. So it was all like in a dank studio that none of them even paid for. And they couldn't even use old school cells. They had to use like vinyl cells because the first couple seconds of Daicon was made and they tried to stack the cells on top of each other. But because they were using vinyl cells, all the paint got stuck.
Oh, shit.
So that's why like the first couple seconds in Daicon are a little choppy.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of the history. So what do you guys like think of it? I mean, as its own thing or like relative to Daicon 4?
I mean, for me, Daicon 3 is just... One, it's just so crazy, because there's so few things where you can see, like, an important auteur's first work. because a lot of times, like, a lot of those things are lost. They're from way back, or like they're not worth watching. But for someone like Hideaki Anno, who is just so influential for so many reasons, for so many people, just like getting to see Daicon III, it's like watching history unfold.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, it was just like crazy. And also, like, it's its own time capsule with all the references to so many anime at the time that are still well regarded as classics. Like you said, Space Battleship Yamato makes a bunch of appearances there. There's also a bunch of Star Wars. I mean, the lightsaber thing gets brought up. The Itano Circus. So I'm guessing that by that point they had already
Itano Circus.
Yeah, the Itano Circus is actually really funny. I'm sorry, this entire podcast is just going to be me interjecting with trivia.
Perfect, I love it.
The Itano Circus in Daicon IV, you know, the part where like all the swords like just start like going apeshit on the screen.
Yeah, and it's all at once, I want to say, because it looks super fluid.
Yeah, that was actually drawn by Itano himself.
What?
Yeah. Well, when we get into the history of Daicon IV, it's really weird. But yeah, they had a lot of different people. Basically, everyone was working on Macross. So Daicon IV is almost entirely done by Macross animators.
What? That's crazy.
Well, that explains the Macross references.
It really does. Dang. Yeah. Yes. And also, it is interesting because you're right. Both Daicon 3 and Daicon 4 came out before Nausicaa came out as a film. But the manga for Nausicaa had started out in 1982. So, like, right in between Daicon 3 and Daicon 4.
Oh, interesting.
But it was like Daicon 3 is just so much fun because it feels like one of those works, and I like you hear those like creators talk about it, like I could only have made this thing at that time in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like
that's like a not to cut you off, but that's kind of like that's such a Gainax thing because most of the Gainax's biggest works like Fooly Cooly and Evangelion were such a product of its time, the time of the creators.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, it's that sensation of this was when it was important to the people that made it, but also it's a commentary on things going on in the medium or outside the medium at that point, right? You know, I mean, when we get there, that's like especially a theme in like Kare Kano or Evangelion, where those are basically just commentaries on what it is to live in the 90s.
Right. Oh, yeah. 100%. Especially, so I haven't seen Karakano, His and Her Circumstances yet, but I will for the podcast. So I'm excited for that. I have heard certain complaints about things turning black and white, so I know it's gonna be good, actually. Cause like, I mean, like, you know what? Like, what's also funny with Daicon 3 and Daicon 4 is like, there's a lot of things that are like kind of Gainax traits that you can kind of see happening from the beginning. Like, first of all, the fact that they had like coloring issues and like budget issues from the very beginning. The jam-packed references to other mechas and other pop culture references. Anno doing his thing. And also,
I mean, hell, Daicon 4 has the first Gainax bounce.
Yep.
Oh, does it? Interesting. I mean, that makes sense that it would be the first Gainax bounce with the Gainaxing.
Yeah.
But, dang. Makes sense. Yeah, let's talk. I mean, there's not much plot-wise to talk about Daicon 3, Daicon 4, and that's, like, part of the reason we're doing this miniseries. We want to talk about the influence, the reach of Gainax over the years. And let's dive into Daicon 4, then, which came out in 1983, so 2 years after Daicon 3 had come out. We get Daicon 4. And you know what, Spira, just if you're okay with it, just take the floor, like Professor Spira. Break it down.
Okay, I'm pushing my glasses up to my face.
Are they reflecting with light so we can't see your eyes?
Exactly, and the rest of the room's really dark.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'm doing the thing where like I'm lifting my head up and you can only see one eye.
Oh, do you have bangs covering your eyebrows as well?
No,
But
no, no. I have like a straight bangs so that you can
ooh,
only see like my eyes and my eyebrows. It's really
oh,
intense.
gotcha, gotcha. And you're wearing a school uniform as well, of
Of
course.
course, yeah.
Of course.
So, yeah, so I guess we can talk about like the fallout of Daicon 3 because Daicon 3 had a really interesting end
Mm-hmm.
leading into Daicon 4. As I mentioned before, the Oda King, like this was made in his house. It was done over like a very short amount of time with not a lot of money. So that's actually where the OVA aspect came out, like this being the first OVA before like Dallas, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea being it cost them so much to make this that they wanted to make another one for the next icon, which they knew was in 2 years, right?
Uh-huh.
So they sold Daicon 3 as a disc to convention goers in order to, make the money they needed for Daicon 4.
Right.
So Daicon 3 was like a much smaller crew, right? It was
Right.
just like the two producers, well, air quotes, producers. Um, there was Hideaki Anno, who was like
Mhm.
drawing all the mech stuff. Yamaga, who is directing the entire thing. Yamaga is going to become really important when we talk about like Honia Mise. And Akai, who did all of the character drawings, right?
Mhm.
So anything in Daicon 3 that was a ship or a monster, Anno.
Uh-huh.
Anything that was like a person was Akai, right?
Uh-huh.
So basically, all those guys are buddies from like Osaka University of the Arts.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Uh-huh.
and they were like, wow, now we have a lot of money. Well, a lot, air quotes. So they wanted to like get to working on Daicon 4. They had the time to do so. But they quickly overexerted themselves. I think the Daicon 4 was meant to be done on like proper film tape
Mm-hmm.
and it was going to be like 15 to 20 minutes. But, you know,
It's not. Spoiler alert.
exactly, for sure. Oh, yeah, no bar on spoilers. If you're here and you haven't seen Daicon 4,
Honestly, we're at 22 minutes into this podcast. And like you could have watched Daicon 3 and Daicon 4 twice by now.
twice in a row,
And still
back
not
to
get all the
back,
references.
This is
or
true.
4 times simultaneously.
Or 8 times at 2 times speed endlessly.
Oh, shit.
Why don't we call that endless 8 or something?
No, no, let's
No,
not.
let's
Okay,
not.
so yeah, so Daicon 4 was made in an actual studio, and by that I mean a sweat house. Um,
What's the difference?
well, true enough. Well, actually, the working conditions for Daicon 4 very humorously kind of models, well, humorously, air quotes, models the modern work ethic when it comes to anime production. Like crunch time, people sleeping in the studio, turning off AC because the AC costs money, right? It's even impressive to say that a lot of the people that worked on Daicon 4 were just fans of SF or
Mm-hmm.
buddies of the main trio.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't even really live in Osaka. So they all lived in this like sweat house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we start to get a lot of other people that become involved in Gainax who entered in Daicon 4. Probably the most significant being Yoshiyuki Sadamoto,
Mm-hmm.
the character designer for
Designer.
Nadia, Ava.
Did the manga art for Evangelion, if I remember correctly? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was like one of those things where one person does the art and one person does the story. I didn't know he did both. I mean, I love the manga art. It looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, because I think one thing that people tend to undercut when talking about manga and anime is the role of the character designer.
Mm-hmm.
The character designer doesn't just draw the characters, they craft the character identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So big part of like the reason why you see the character designer right after like director and art director is because the character designers literally design the characters. So because of that, you see a lot of character designers that end up doing like mangas or something else because they have such a close connection to them. That's why you have like the Gundam The Origin manga,
Right.
done by the character designer, or the Madoka stuff being done by, or even like something as big as Utena had its own manga just from the character designer.
What? Shirobako never told me this though. That's so strange. I thought Shirobako was like the end all be all for like everyone's role in the anime industry.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm gonna go ahead and say I haven't seen Shirobako yet. So all I know is from like watching Blue Blazes and doing a lot I mean, that's crazy. I think Blue Blazes should be our last thing that we...
Actually, yeah, Hideaki Anno makes an appearance in Blue Blazes. Well,
wait,
someone
really?
plays Hideaki Anno, but like it's the best thing ever.
Didn't Hideaki
it's really funny because in Blue Blazes you have someone playing as Hideaki Anno,
and it's the funniest shit ever.
And then Hideaki Anno shows up himself as a cameo, playing somebody else. So it's fucking weird.
Didn't Hideaki Anno play someone in like The Wind Rises or some shit?
Yeah, he voiced the main character.
Yeah.
He also voices some of the cats in Fooly Cooly.
Yep. Yep, that's a thing that happened. So yeah, like the two biggest, most important people that sort of got added to the new team of 12 were Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, who we just talked about at, a paragraphs full, and Mahiro Maeda, who is a little bit less known in the anime industry from Westerners. But his big thing was directing Gankutsuo, the Count of Monte Cristo anime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is absolutely gorgeous and really amazing. Anybody listening to this, watch Gankutsuo. We're not going to cover it in this show, but just do it anyway.
But just go watch it.
Go watch it.
For that opening as well. That sick opening.
Oh my god, that opening. But yeah, Mahiro Maeda also did, here's a fun fact, the art direction, I believe, for Mad Max Fury Road.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Next, you're going to tell me he's like the evil twin of Jun Maeda and also does baseball episodes in his anime.
Yes.
Oh my god, if you look at a picture of him, he looks like someone's evil twin. For sure. But yeah, Mahiro Maeda's brilliant. I think at some point we should probably do, but I mean, if we're gonna do Kara and Trigger, we should do the Animator Expo.
Oh, yes. All 30 plus of them?
Yeah, I mean, we can just do portions.
That's
like
true.
An episode for each, season.
Right.
I don't know. We'll talk about that later. Point is, he has an episode in there that's amazing. He adapts an entire novel in 10 minutes. And it is insane from beginning to end. But yeah, so these two people entered the fray. And I mean, both of them were buddies from a university in Tokyo. They came and moved into Osaka for Daicon IV. And they ended up becoming big names in Gainax, right? So yeah, Gainax 4. Daicon 4 ends up having this thing where they develop all of this, and after developing it and, making this amazing piece of art, these 12 people end up creating the Daicon film group, which we'll talk about at the end of this podcast, probably, or of this episode of the podcast. So what do you guys think of Daicon 4?
I think it's a huge step up from Daicon III in every way possible. It has the best song ever as a backdrop. Also, it made me think of Fooly Cooly because they're in the final episode. Haruko has the
yells out
suit,
Daicon V, right?
And yeah, and I was like, oh, yeah.
On
I
the
didn't know what that
bodysuit.
meant at the time. And I was like, wait, Is that what this is? Oh my god, this is a reference to Daicon IV. Okay, cool.
Yep. Also, another big reference that Gainax ends up making is the very final episode of the Animator Expo is called Cassette Girl.
Uh-huh.
And that one is a huge, like, sort of homage to the Daicons and reflexive of how anime has evolved from them.
Mm-hmm.
And that one's really interesting. So when we get to that, probably going to be a big talking point.
I mean, in a vacuum, would you say Daicon 3 and 4 are like, where would you rank them in terms of influentiality pre-Evangelion?
Oh,
Because there's gotta be, like, Ashita no Joe, of course.
mm-hmm.
Tezuka stuff. And then what's the first Maho Shoujo anime again? It's
Well, I mean, there's Sally the Witch, which is
Right.
very wholesome, and then there's fucking like Cutie Honey.
is fucking Cutie Honey an appropriate adjective to use before it?
Absolutely. Cutie Honey appears in Daicon IV.
Oh shit!
For like a frame.
Nausicaa appears in Daicon 4.
Yep.
A lot of things appear in
people
Daicon.
appear in Daicon IV.
You get the Atano Circus, which like looks so gorgeous. The shot of like the supposed atomic bomb going off and like decimating the city, but like turning it into sakura blossoms.
That was the best part of the entire thing.
I was like, oh my god, how'd you make this like in the 1980s? Like we can't do this shit in like 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not even just the animation, because the animation is gorgeous, but just like the concept, you know?
Yeah.
The transformative aspect of it. And like how you can make like a gripping piece of like not even social commentary, but more like social celebration, right? I feel like Daicon 4 it's saying we're all here, we're otaku, we're proud of who we are,
right?
And they relish in it, right?
Yeah, no, it's just I just feel like so inspired watching it, and it feels dumb, right? Because like in a vacuum, if you didn't know any of the influence of it, if you didn't know who was working on it, and you had not seen any anime before, like you show this to like, I don't know, some 20-year-old in college who has never seen anime but like Dragon Ball Z, they'd see this and be like, what the shit? Like you just wasted like 6 minutes of my life.
Yeah.
But like it's one of those things where like when you love, like you said, like it was made by people who love the medium, and when you love the medium, it resonates a lot with you in a way that like I feel like is one of the calling cards for Gainax.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gainax has, I think the unfortunate part of tracking their entire history is that we're eventually going to talk about like the decline of Gainax. But I think like Daicon III and Daicon IV are really interesting in the sense that they're almost the first works of anime, almost, because there was a little bit of meta stuff beforehand. But this really does feel like the most important anime in terms of recognizing anime fandom as an identity, right? That this is a work of art that is to be celebrated rather than, because like Tezuka was trying to make anime into art, but it ended up being sort of more Tezuka being an artist rather than anime being art, right?
Right.
Daizaki was sort of transforming the landscape with his influences, but it was more like westernized and more filmic or like cinematic. Whereas the Daicons were anime, like the most extreme examples of anime, like all the callbacks, all the goofiness, none of the assured self-importance. It's a work of art that kind of rejects the label of art.
Yeah. Fun things are fun. Fun things for the sake of being fun. Yeah, and it's like the spirit of Daicon is very much well and alive, and has been since. I mean, I actually wanted to ask you this, and I feel like maybe we'll never get any concrete confirmation, but I wouldn't be surprised. So there's Gunbuster, and then later they did Diebuster. Was the Die and Diebuster supposed to be a callback to Daicon?
I have no clue. If that can either be like a huge stretch or something totally intentional, because Gainax is Gainax, right?
And Gainax is gonna do Gainax shit.
Yeah. Gainax is probably like, since we're talking about Daicon and this is like the inaugural episode of this, series, I think like the thing that, maybe we should move on to this is like what Gainax means to us, right? Like why we're sitting around talking about Gainax.
Right.
And I guess like for me, to kick it off, Gainax to me feels like people that are making what they feel, right? They're making like artless art that therefore becomes extremely transformative, that becomes extremely emblematic of the culture, of the psychosis of the time era, right? The social consciousness, everything. Not because I think they're trying to evoke that. I think it's because they're just putting themselves in the art, right? And therefore it gets expressed in that way. So if it's like a bunch of characters talking about shit in front of a toilet and then a toilet monster comes out, panty and stocking, we're going to talk about you. It still has that social consciousness. It still has, this is silly and it's absurd. And someone might watch it and go, this is a crock of shit. But you can't ever deny that it was made with heart,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. How about you, Bex? Why do you so you love Katakano, I know, and I'm pretty sure you love Katakano.
I enjoy most of Gainax's like big shows generally.
So what does Gainax mean to you?
I don't know. What I love most about Gainax is that like when I think about anime, the first thing I think about is like a Gainax show, like Fooly Cooly, right? It is like the definition of anime, right? Like Spira said, like it's full of references, it's full of feelings, it's just full of like a whole bunch of stuff. And more often than not, their shows like resonate with me a lot of the time more than other shows like Gurren Lagann, Evangelion, Fooly Cooly, Kadekano, all that stuff. Like Spira said, has a lot of feeling in it, and I can really, I hate to sound like this, but like I can feel what they're feeling a lot of the time. Like it's very, it's communicated really well, I think.
Right.
It's kind of what I come back to a lot of the time, and that's why I was sad to see that they're kind of more or less dead, because like I think Gainax was that like, because like I don't know if this is a weird transition, but like Gainax kind of started by themselves. Like if you look at like how a lot of studios started back in the day, Gainax just started out of nowhere independently, and it always felt like they were always just doing their own thing, as opposed to just a lot of studios just doing mostly adaptations of stuff. But like Gainax has always just did, and you could say the same about like Trigger, like they just kind of do whatever the fuck they want, right? Like anything they want, and they just do what they feel, kind of like what Spira said. But yeah, I don't know where I'm really going with this, but like that's what kind of means to me is like it's all about like doing what you want and just expressing yourself a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. For me, so I had, and like we'll get to this more, I guess, when we talk about these specific shows, but for me, I came across Evangelion for the first time when I was a sophomore in college. And there was this girl who was really cute, and we were talking, and I remembered her like briefly bringing up Evangelion, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna really impress this chick by like watching Evangelion in a weekend."
Get it.
Don't don't do it. Don't watch Evangelion in a weekend. Oh God, this is a terrible idea. But it was also like the first time I had watched something, and I realized like, when you grow up, when you go to like high school and you take like English classes or whatever, and like you're like, oh, like this is a really important, like a quote unquote important book. Like read it, study it. It's not supposed to be fun. Like fucking Jane Eyre isn't like a fun read for me. Like Wuthering Heights wasn't a very fun read. Charles Dickens wasn't very fun, but like I understood why I needed to read them, right?
Damn, you're just roasting the Brontes.
Charlotte and Emily, I'm sorry. The Brontes, I actually do kind of like Jane Eyre now. After I reread it later on, but like fuck Wuthering Heights, that was garbage. But with Evangelion, the first time I watched it was just like, you can have fun while being influential. Like you can do this crazy stuff, and when you like, and we bring this up, like when you have that energy and you have that passion, like it comes through. Like you, like they have this vision, right? They're like, I'm gonna do this fucking insane show with like middle schoolers who are fucking depressed as hell. There's gonna be a lot of sex like things going on. There's gonna be like a whole bunch of like gender and sexuality metaphors. There's gonna be a lot of like weird parent stuff. Gendo's gonna be father of the year. You're gonna have like all these mechas, but like it's gonna be at its core a story about personal relations. Like you try to pitch that in Hollywood today and people will just show you the door.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, because that's like probably the biggest and like the strangest appeal of Gainax is that they pitch you something that seems absurd, right? Like fundamentally bizarre.
Right.
But
But it
then,
works every time.
yeah, but it works every time. So it's like, yeah, we're gonna give you like, a teen sex show with robots about the hedgehog's dilemma, right? And it's like, it works.
Or we're gonna give you a coming of age story where a kid grows like actual like erections out of his forehead, and like robots come out of said, erections, and it's it's all about puberty basically, yeah. But
or you're gonna get a show with like fucking drills and monsters and no explanations for how these robots function other than manly energy and brotherly combining. But it's really a story of how people need to be able to move on, and you have to be able to let go of the past.
Yeah, exactly. You need to define yourself, right? And I think what's really compelling about all of these, because I think Gainax, more than any studio, creates probably the most amount of original anime about coming of age.
What's funny is that like some of their worst stuff is like, because they've done like, what's that one anime that came out in like 2008? Like some of their worst shows have been adaptations actually.
Oh, Medaka Bok? No, that was Shaft, if I remember.
Nah, it was I don't remember the name. I'm gonna look it up. But anyway, like a lot of their best work in like most impactful work is original stuff usually.
Yeah, which is really interesting. I feel like a lot of studios maybe go for that and like find like a bit of success, but it's that idea of like every story's been told before,
right?
So you need to tell a story a different way. And I think what Gainax does that's so successful, and you can even see it in Daicon IV and Daicon III, is that they have an idea, and maybe it's juvenile, right? But they capture the essence of the feeling of when this kind of stuff would be cool, right?
Right.
So it's like Ava, tits, robots, all this kind of stuff. But when you're a 13-year-old, you're going through some identity issues. You're going to hate your parents. You're going to love boobs. You're going to love robots. So it all feels genuine. It feels like a moment in a person's life captured through their interests, right? Rather than like something developed in like a studio pitching itself to those interests, right? Which is sort of why these shows are so intricate, because they have the happy and the sad. They have the absurd and the cool with the really, existential. They weigh those two things together. And what ends up happening is you have a show about 13-year-olds that feels like it's about 13-year-olds. And the show itself is almost framed from a 13-year-old perspective rather than a boardroom of old people thinking, hey, what do 13-year-olds like?
Right. That's how you get the 80s Transformers anime.
Oh God, I watched the movie of that recently, and it was like kind of bad. But
that's
it
what
had
like
Orson
a board
Welles
of like
voice
old
Unicron.
suits think is important and what 13-year-olds want. And also like they commit to these things and they ground them. Like it might be the most fantastical shit, but it's things have consequences. Things are like Gurren Lagann, like I mean like continually says do the impossible, see the invisible, kick reason to the curb. This is the drill that will pierce the heavens, but like there are fucking consequences to people's actions. Like you can be as fantastical as you want, you can row and fight the powers you want, but there's gonna be consequences. They fully commit to it. And like with Daicon IV, they don't just have like a cameo here and there. It's not like a Stan Lee cameo in a Marvel movie. They're like, this is going to have like 5 references per second.
Absolutely, like even in one frame, like towards the end where it's like every single Ultraman and Ultra 7 kaiju in one fucking frame, and it's 50 of them.
Right.
And it's like, holy shit. So it has that, yeah, exactly, that commitment that you're saying where it's like, this isn't going to have parodies. This is a parody.
Right.
This isn't going to have cameos. This is a cameo, right?
Right.
They never go halfway. Well, they do, and those are the bad ones, but
right.
They've taken them out of the canon.
Yeah. Like Darling in the Franxx, which is technically like even literally half Trigger, half Cloverworks A1 Pictures. So
I want to say I found the one adaptation by Gainax I thought was really bad. It was Shikabane Kime from like 2008, but nobody's seen it, so yeah, that's what it is. The Corpse Princess, not great, but
yeah.
Dandelion was like as well, also not great.
I mean, like something like Hanamaru Kindergarten. I mean, it's fine, but it's so obviously an adaptation.
That was the most passive-aggressive fine I've ever heard, and I'm from Jersey, New York, so...
But I mean, like... But I think that's also, like, part of, like... And we're eventually, you know... That's going to be a big thing that we talk about is the transformation of the studio when people start to leave, when people start to create their own projects and stuff. Like, Gainax eventually becomes what they're trying to fight against.
Right.
Like a studio that makes things to sell them, right? And you really start to see that in the difference of how they handle adaptations. Like in Daicon IV, it's throw all these things in here, but not so that someone can point at the screen and laugh and go, haha, Lord of the Rings, right?
Right.
It's for someone that watches the whole thing to go, oh my God, this is my childhood, right? These people get me, right?
Right.
So then you have something like Karikano, which is an adaptation, but it's so elevated. Not to say that Karikano is bad at all. It's one of my favorite rom-coms, like for the manga. Well, quotation
Pom-roms? Oh.
Yeah.
It's got
so
drama.
I'm
It's
just
a
gonna say
rom-com.
romances.
Rom-com?
Yeah, but Gainax basically, it grabs the fundamentals of what happens in the manga and it makes it something that can only exist in anime, right? They don't just adapt each frame. They make it their own, right?
And they know that too. I mean, like, you don't have to go any further than Fooly, and like, we'll get into this more in Fooly Cooly, like the manga scene where they have them through the manga panels, and then they also go out and say like, oh, people are gonna complain that this is like a cheap way to do anime, and then someone else is like, oh, like this is actually a lot more expensive for us to do it this way.
Oh God, we're gonna like that's a credo for Gainax where it's like, oh yeah, this looks like it's really cheap to do, but it's 10 times more expensive than it would have been.
The black and white scenes, the black and white episode of Gunbuster, yeah, like a lot of people, like I think even me, like, or anyone, but I'll just say me so I don't speak on behalf of anyone else, but like you watch these things and like your first instinct is like, oh, blah 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 budget, but then like you do some basic fucking research and you're like, oh, this is all really deliberate. Like these people have a vision from the start, And sometimes things fall apart. Projects do. That's how we get the elevator scene in Evangelion. But they make the most.
Hey man, the elevator scene was good. I like that
I
scene.
love it. Like they commit to it, right? Like,
but even in the face of like things falling apart, it's still good. Like that scene of Kaoru.
You make the best out. Like
they make the best out of what they have.
People gave Gainax a bunch of lemonades, and they're like, "We're gonna make the best fucking lemonade stand spiked with like all like I don't know." Fucking tequila that you've ever seen.
Yeah. So going back to Daicon IV specifically, this was supposed to be 15 minutes, 20 minutes with a narrative. Right. But instead, they were like, we can't do that. Let's make it 7 minutes, but just fill it. Right. The most dense, thick 7 minutes of animation that you're likely going to find.
Don't waste a single frame.
Yeah, exactly. Not a single frame is disposable, right? Every single frame helps weave the tale of this is the 80s,
right?
This is what it means to love nerd shit, right? You can take a single frame out and it's like whatever, right? It'll minimize it.
And it's not like casual love shit, right? They like do this in ones. They do this I can't even imagine how painstaking must have been to like in the 80s to do these like an Etano circus in ones.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, like you have like these nice offices, and sure you might work late, but you have like a drawing tablet, you have like software programs. You could probably do like software programs where it fills in the frames in for you. But like Itano had to do each key animation frame by his fucking self.
Yeah, he sat down and drew that entire thing.
And he had no obligation. I'm guessing like these guys had no contractual obligation to do this. It was just like
Itano was just there because he was friends with them. I think that's also like a big thing of note. And it's a really funny like bylaw of anime. Every single person that works in anime today has either started with a Macross or a Gundam, right?
How do you mean? Oh, like people saying like that was like my first anime, or do you mean like having worked on that
like not fans, but like people in the industry. You know? You can trace a whole lot of people to this unless they're active in the 70s.
Right.
But it's one of those things where it's like, the majority of Daicon IV cast was from Macross, which is a very, very known history of a production issue. Because Macross itself was almost made as a otaku anime, right? It spins parodies, it plays with the medium, it does a whole bunch of stuff that arguably, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you can tell that a lot of people put their work into it. So then when they all show up for Daicon IV, it's not because they're contractually obligated, like you mentioned. It's because they're just there to have fun. They love drawing. They love weaving these narratives, right?
Yeah, that's really one of the reasons why. I think that's the main reason we're doing this series. Because you don't see that. And you don't, like... I can't think of an anime recently where, like... I guess maybe like Kill la Kill, where it was just like, let's do this. But even then, it's like it's like the ex-Gainax pats.
Yeah.
Like they're all just like, yeah, let's fucking go. Let's do this. Don't care about the money. Don't care about the production committee. If people love it, they love it. If people don't, they don't. But we're going to love it.
Yeah. Yeah, they just have fun and they throw it out there. And if you don't have fun, well, that's on you, right?
Like, yeah. To me, like, the only things that come to mind in, like, the last 15 years, and you guys would probably know better than I do, but to me, it's, like, not including Gainax Trigger. Code Geass, maybe? Cowboy Bebop? Where it's just people...
Bebop is already 90s.
True, yeah. So that's not even, wow, damn. It's 2018, 15 years ago is 2003.
Yeah, it's 20 years ago. Can you like wrap your mind around that?
I can't. Damn. Yeah, so like Bebop doesn't even fit into that time span then. It's like,
no, I mean, which is really cool. when we get into 90s Gainax, that's going to
Hmm.
be so much fun because
Oh,
the
right.
90s are like, I think, well, going back to Daicon 4, it helps solidify an otaku identity, right?
Hmm.
And because of things like Daicon 4, you have the 90s original anime boom
Hmm.
where a lot of different people who had like some work in the industry who were raised on the same kind of anime that spawned Daikon,
Hmm.
who were enervated by Daikon, by Otaku no Video and Hone Mise and the success story of Gainax. You end up having like Kunihiko Ikuhara or
Hmm.
Shinichiro Watanabe, like these big names that are given a space. They're like, okay, go make something. And what they make is something incredibly original and imaginative and
Hmm.
wonderful because they grew up on this.
Hmm.
They're making anime as anime fans. And this is like, Daicon 4 is the first time that we really see that. So Daicon 4 almost sets the tone, it sets the space for someone like Mamoru Oshii to make something as absurd as Angel's Egg, right?
Right.
Where it's like, I don't think Angel's Egg could have happened
Hmm.
if Tezuka didn't demand it or something like that.
Right.
If it not for something like Daicon 4, which allowed studios to recognize that otaku like otaku shit, right? They like the weird side of anime that's made by people that love anime.
Yeah. It's I feel like it's just Gainax has just done so much to the industry. Since its formation, and like you could take each decade, right? And you could talk at length about, and we will. That's why we're doing this, right? So like the 80s with Daicon, with Gunbuster, the 90s with Evangelion, with Katakano, with all their shit. And the 2000s when you had Diebuster, when you had Gurren Lagann, when you had Fooly Cooly. Like they set the tone for those decades.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of fun. It's great because we get to talk about it and we get to watch these things, and it's like if you were just going to watch one studio's things through the years and someone was like to get a good grasp of history, Gainax would be, I think, probably the most obvious choice. Maybe Toei, right? Just because Toei's just been around for fucking ever.
Well, with
Bushi
Toei, you
Productions.
can see the evolution of the industry because
Mhm.
Toei is such an industry studio,
True.
right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Sunrise. You just get to see how people love Gundam.
yeah, you see the influence of Gundam, which
Hmm.
that can be its own show.
Right. And
Um,
with Gainax, you get to see the evolution of otaku culture.
Absolutely. I think that's the big thing, and that's why, someone would want to listen to a podcast like this. Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Ooh,
Um,
ooh, ooh.
yeah, because,
We're getting
you
meta
like
here.
anime. You want to know why
Hmm.
anime is the way that it is. And someone can tell you, oh, yeah, modern anime wouldn't be the same thing if Gainax weren't around. And that can sound like a big hyperbole if you just don't know what's
Hmm.
been going on in the industry. And I think something like this will really sort of help shape that perspective, right?
Because it's also something unique to anime. Because I guess like with film, like you can say like, oh, Citizen Kane, but you can't point to like a string of movies by maybe Kubrick. And like Kubrick obviously had a huge influence on Anno. Um, but like it's hard to say like you point to like one quote unquote studio and be like, oh, their stuff was like so influential. Like you cannot talk about modern films without like this studio.
You
Because
can
like,
talk about like specific auteurs,
mhm,
like, as you mentioned, Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, even someone like John Hughes kind of set the tone for the 80s, right?
mhm, right, yeah,
But like all these auteurs had their own influence, but they're auteurs. They're
mhm,
not a studio,
right,
right? Like you can like the closest thing that we have now is like Blumhouse for modern horror. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that thing where it's still not even, it doesn't compare, right?
Right. Mhm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. So in case you were wondering why we are talking for an hour about two
About 7
OVAs,
minutes worth of anime.
yeah.
it's because it's kind of important, and we hope you find it important as well. And we hope you keep listening to this series because honestly, like, we love this series. We love this shit. We could talk about it with or without you guys, but honestly, like, I think one of the things, and like, right, these things were made for conventions. These things were made for many people to watch together as a collective. And so we hope you listen to this as a collective. You listen along with us. You watch along with us. And you get to kind of see why we love this medium and this studio so much. So, Beck, Spira, any last thoughts on Daicon 3 and 4?
I guess for like the final lead in to next uh episode, right?
Yes.
Is the sort of fallout of Daicon 4, which
Mm-hmm.
is really simple. It's just Daicon 4 was really, really influential. Like almost immediately, people saw this and they recognized, wow, this is a thing. And that's going to be the entire pace for Otaku no Video, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually autobiographical. It's like an autobiographical anime, and when we get to it, they actually have integrated interviews with otaku that experienced Daicon 4, right? Like not just the video, but the convention itself.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of immediately after Daicon 4, they were like, you know what? We love this. People love this. Let's do something. So
Mm-hmm.
Toshio Okada basically says, yeah, let's make our own studio. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where Daicon Film comes into the picture. And next time we'll talk about the formation of like how Daicon Film eventually became Gainax,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm. Bex, any last thoughts from you?
I'm not really sure what to say, actually. I think everyone should watch it if you haven't already. I mean, you just listen to us talk about it for an hour.
You could literally watch it 5 times straight through.
And you should do it right now.
Do it.
Because the song is really good. Like,
Yeah. Honestly, just like put it side to side. You can do it. We have the technology. You can listen to us while watching
you can do
Daicon 3
both.
and
You have
4
two
over and
eyes.
over again.
Just focus one eye on each.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have 3 eyes, that just makes it easier.
You're also kind of weird, but you know what? Like, we love you. So
You're the kind of people we want listening to this show.
exactly.
If you have 3 eyes, send us a PM. We want you on this show.
What if you have 3 eyes but no ears? That's kind of a problem.
Oh shit. Well, fuck
Shit.
you. We don't want you around, you fucking freak.
So on that note, I believe next time, are we going to be talking about Gunbuster? Because that comes next chronologically, or is Otaku no Video more thematically, right? What? It's the age-old question of chronological versus broadcast.
Yeah. I think we might actually... Well, Gunbuster is actually predated by Hone Mise. So by a year, and Hone Mise is actually the reason why Gainax is Gainax, for how we're going to hear about it. And Hone Mise has a really interesting production history. So I think Hone Mise next, and then we can go into Gunbuster and Otaku no Video.
So I'm looking at the Hone Mise mal list, and it says it's 4 minutes long.
Wait.
Okay, that is not fucking true.
It's not?
No, it's like a fucking hour and a half.
Oh,
movie.
no, it's 2 hours. Yeah, so there's the short film, the pilot film, and then there's the actual film that came out in 1987 that was 2 hours long. So yeah.
Yeah, which is going to be such a big topic of conversation because not only is it one of the first small studio made anime movies, right? But also, and this is going to be really funny to talk about in terms of budget, we're going from Daicon 4, which made is like tens of thousands of yen, so like pocket money,
Right.
versus Honeomise, which is so expensive, the most expensive anime movie made at that point, that it
Uh-huh.
actually straight up bankrupt studios. So we're going to talk about these two in tandem, and it's going to be really funny. So absolutely tune in if you found any of this interesting and want to see how, anime has formed and how people can simultaneously make a whole lot of money and a whole lot of not of money, or whole lot of not bleh. Whatever. You get the point. Trust me, it's going to be interesting. Trust me.
Yes. So tune in next time. We're not sure what the schedule of this will be, but
It'll come out when it comes out.
It'll come out when you know what? It'll just be like the OVAs of old. You won't know when the release schedule
It'll come out every few years.
It's like fucking Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
It'll take
tell
over
you when the
20
next episode is. Right.
We're doing this old school. Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for listening in. Thank you, Spira, for coming on. This was awesome. I learned so much. Like, I need to sit down and reevaluate my life decisions for why I didn't know this stuff before. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. So viewers at home, make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, on YouTube, on Spotify if you want to be notified of our latest episodes. We got a lot of stuff coming in the pipeline that anyone who's a fan of anime should.
Got some big shit coming.
We got some big shit coming. We got a lot of stuff that people will be interested. If you want, we even have a couple episodes on otaku culture coming up, like a merch episode. So that should be cool if you found any of the industry talk here.
This is gonna come out after the merch episode.
Oh shit! So yeah, if you listen to this and you haven't listened to the merch episode, listen to that, because that's probably something that'll be right up your alley if you found this.
This will probably come out in November, in all honesty. Probably even December. I don't know.
It'll come out in the year that Diebuster.
People of the future.
We have anime. And on that note,
big things are coming. Maybe even an interview with Hideaki Anno.
Wait,
no one told me about this.
Well, I'm just saying maybe it could happen.
That's true. You're not making any promises.
I'd like that to happen. I'd really like that, actually.
Yes.
I'm going to say there's a 0.2% chance that that'll happen. Yes. So stick around just in case.
Until then, continue to aim for the top 3, Podbuster.